Hello, and welcome to Temple of the False Pod, where our decks are not optimized, but our plays sure as heck are fun. I'm Andy.
I'm Bruce.
And we've been on a roll talking about some things that people might have missed during the pandemic, or maybe even just cards that are just kind of a little more on the casual side, and that we just wanted to highlight. I mean, I don't know if any of the cards that I chose today are necessarily super casual, but they're fun. That's why I brought them to the table.
Right, and the other thing we're looking at is we generally are avoiding legendary creatures in this little review of the cards from the cards that COVID may have made you forget. Just because you can search for your legendary creatures, and you will find them quickly enough, and you'll find the ones you like and go from there. You don't really need us to be pointing you to them. So we're going to pass on that. What we wanted to really look at are the cards that go in your deck.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, Wizards makes a version of a card that's just that little bit better than what they've done in the past. So we want you to be aware of those and not get caught with your pants down.
Whoa.
There we go.
Whoa. Starting this episode off strong.
Yeah.
Speaking of pants down, Bruce, what's your first card?
Wow, that really is pants down. Let's start with Traitorous Greed.
Oh.
So Traitorous Greed is 3 and a red for a sorcery. It says gain control of target creature until the end of the turn. Untap that creature. It gains haste until the end of the turn. Add 2 mana of any one color. This is pretty much matches up with every other card that does this. Between Act of Treason, Besmirch, Hijack, Lose Calm, Mark a Mutiny. There's a ton. Those are the ones I actually wrote down. That's why I spit them off so fast. And then there's a whole bunch of others that I didn't bother to write down because there are that many others.
They're all
right.
Threaten effects.
Generally speaking,
they all cost.
Well, generally speaking, they cost 3. Some cost 4.
Yeah.
This one, Traitorous Greed, costs 4. However, you're getting 2 of that back. I looked at this and I thought, I can get 2 mana of any color.
Oh, wow,
so
yeah.
it means when I steal an opponent's creature, if it has an activated ability that has a color in the activation cost, it means I can now make that color. And so I kind of like that idea. Just completely setting aside that this thing costs 2 as long as you're playing another spell right away. Sure, there's some limitations. Obviously, you can't use that activated ability during the combat step because the mana would already be gone.
Mm-hmm.
You really have to use it right away. But it's an option so that you can do that. And on top of that, it is 2 mana of any color. So if you are a little mana screwed, you can always do it that way as well.
Yeah. Something I realized we didn't mention earlier, all of these cards for this episode are going to be from M21.
Oh.
Core Set 2021 came out July-ish of 2020.
Yeah.
Because that's how those work.
That's how the core sets work, yeah.
So.
And I wasn't sure. I went through and tried to make sure I didn't choose cards that were reprints from before COVID.
Yeah.
So I saw Traitorous Greed. I thought that was really interesting.
I like it.
Yeah. So if it doesn't fit with what your deck theme is, then obviously you're not going to use it. I still really like Besmirch. I like the idea of only 3 mana and then you get to go to creature. There's all kind of benefits to that, and I really like Goad. But Traitorous Greed, I think this is a solid card.
Oh, absolutely.
And certainly something to consider, especially with the way that mana is set up. A lot of time, I think it's going to help a lot of decks.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. It's going to fit nicely in my Prismari deck along with my first card,
yes.
Sublime Epiphany. Sublime Epiphany is the way I like to play counterspells. It's 4 blue, so it's a big spell. And it says choose 1 or more. Counter target spell.
Mm-hmm.
Counter target activated or triggered ability. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Create a token that's a copy of target creature you control. And target player draws a card. So, I mean, for 6 mana, you're at least going to bounce a thing. You're going to create a copy of a creature you control, and you're going to draw a card. Whether or not you're going to counter something, I mean, is pretty high. So you just got to figure out when you're going to fit it in.
Right. So basically, you're paying a premium to do So then this card then does anything that blue does.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, we just listed off 5 options, and I'm not sure that blue does much else than these 5 options. It doesn't allow you to steal a card.
Right.
But beyond that, I mean, bouncing a non-land, targeting a spell, or countering a spell, countering an ability, making a token, drawing a card. I mean,
yeah.
I think you just hit the high points for blue.
Yeah, and I mean, there are instances, and it's not gonna happen terribly often, but there are plenty of instances where you will choose all 5.
Right.
I think that if any of your opponents are playing creature or any sort of like commander that is like, oh, well, like whenever you play a spell, X happens. So a lot of the what's it called, Magecraft from
right.
Strixhaven,
yeah,
that type of thing.
With Sublime Epiphany, though, I mean, with 5 options, I mean, realistically, you're going to get 4. At least you're going to hit 4 every time.
Yeah.
You're either going to counter a spell or you're going to counter an ability, and then it's like, okay, well, then the rest of it is bonus. Target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Well, yeah, I mean, anything.
It's going to be a big blowout for your opponent.
Right. It's like, why wouldn't you do that? Create a token that's a copy of target creature you control. As long as you control a creature, why wouldn't you do this? I mean, even a legendary creature a lot of time has an enter the battlefield ability. And then target player draws a card. Okay, so I get to replace this card. Why wouldn't you do this? I mean, unless you're about to take, damage every time you draw a card, and this is the last point of damage,
right?
You're going to draw that card. So,
and I mean, like 6 mana is a lot, and obviously you're getting a lot out of it. But I think that as you turn the corner to late game, especially in more casual metas like ours,
right?
I think that it's not terribly rare to come across having just 6 mana up at any given point, especially if you are playing more and more instants. I think that like it's going to be like, okay, I'll either play the Sublime Epiphany on something or put it into making tokens or something.
Right. You've got an activated ability on the board that basically says that's why I'm keeping my mana open. Then they never really know if you're actually going to do this. The other thing with Sublime Epiphany is that you're essentially getting it's a 4 permanent swap.
Yeah.
Because you're taking, let's say you're countering a spell. Okay, so that's 1. And then you are returning another permanent to their hand. So they're losing 2 cards. And then you're getting a token, which is essentially another permanent, and you're drawing a card, which is another card. So it's replacing the card you're losing.
It's so good.
There's plenty to it. So
Number 2.
Let's go to Angelic Ascension.
Oh.
Angelic Ascension is 1 and a white. It's an instant. It says exile target creature or planeswalker. And then the controller of that creature or planeswalker gets a 4/4 white angel with flying. Okay, this is not Swords to Plowshares.
No.
This is not Path to Exile.
No. But
an opponent is getting a 4/4 flyer. So, and that's significant. However, you're getting rid of something that's obviously way worse than that.
Yeah.
And
you're getting rid of it for good. I mean,
exactly. And it's exile. So it's getting around any sort of indestructible. So many times getting rid of the planeswalker that has been allowed to get a little bit out of control. Having to deal with the 4/4 angel is a minor cost in comparison to the problem that you've solved here with this 2 mana instant.
Yeah, especially where I think so many people, when they play planeswalkers, really build a wall to protect it from combat damage, obviously.
And it's an instant.
Right.
So when your opponent plays any kind of removal, I can respond to the removal by targeting their planeswalker. So it's, so instead of losing instead of everybody losing their creatures, that player loses their creatures and the planeswalker, and that angel is now gone too.
Oh, like a board wipe, yeah.
Right. So you can let the angel get caught up in the board wipe as long as you time it right. The other end of this is it doesn't say that an opponent controls.
Oh yeah.
So if your creature or your planeswalker is about to die, This reads, spend 2 mana, replace it with a 4/4 Angel.
Yeah.
Yes, the Angel does not have Vigilance. This is not as good as a Sarah Angel. But a 4/4 flyer, I mean, that's a nice replacement for the creature you just lost.
Oh, for sure.
Or the Planeswalker you just lost. I mean, yes, it's not going to be as good as the one you had, but I'll take it.
Yeah, I mean, it's the flexibility that also Swords has, where it's,
Yes.
you can do it to gain the life to let you live another turn.
Right.
We focus so hard on the Planeswalker part because that is a rare set of words
Right.
on an instant, especially in white.
Yes.
To have Planeswalker removal, like targeted Planeswalker removal.
Right. So much of white's Planeswalker removal is tied to black. Like, a lot of it is Orzhov.
Yeah.
Where they're just getting rid of permanents. This one is, it doesn't require that black investment, and you can...
Yeah, and I think it's absolutely worth that 1 extra mana.
Right.
So, it's great.
Yeah. Andy, what's yours?
My next one, I'll stay in white as well.
Sure.
So, with M21, one of the big themes that they had going on, because core sets, they love to make cohesive, even if it's not going to be based around something.
Right.
So one of the themes in this one was dogs. There
Yes.
were a lot of cats and dogs, but mostly dogs. So my second card is Selfless Savior, which is a single white. Going down the card, it's a 1/1 dog. It says sacrifice Selfless Savior. Another target creature you control gains indestructible till end of turn. I don't know what else to say about this other than it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's on the board. People see it coming. This works really well with like an Alpha Strike in an Audric deck, say, or any deck that has Audric in it.
Yeah.
Before combat, sacrifice it to give a creature indestructible. Right. Go to combat, everything is indestructible now. Whether it's your combat or somebody else's, Audric doesn't really care. But I mean, obviously, it's a great thing to have on the board, regardless of the scenario.
Selfless Savior is the rattlesnake. It just sits there, and everybody knows you target one of my creatures that I don't want dead. I'm going to sack this card and give it indestructible till the end of the turn. So it's amazing how often that means I'm never going to target your stuff.
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to see their thing fizzle. They don't see it as, oh, I finally got rid of this, so now somebody else can deal with all of their crap. They see it as, my spell doesn't do anything, and they don't want to waste it. It's like, it's not a waste. It's just harder.
I think
people don't see it that way.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite things, too, with this card, they kind of have gone with this design space with white for years, honestly.
Yeah.
Which is, you're paying 1 on turn 1 or 2 or 3, like early.
Yeah.
So you're banking that 1, because there are plenty of 1 white spells that give something indestructible or hexproof or whatever, and it's on a body. So it's like they see it coming. You're banking that 1 mana because you don't have to pay to sacrifice this. You only have to sacrifice it, and you're getting your chip-ins early. I mean, obviously go for the people without blockers or, whatever. Maybe they think you're faking some sort of combat trick. There we go. But I just really like this card for the fact that you're banking that mana to use it later, essentially.
Yeah.
And it's just on a body. It's on a great little dog. So. Yeah, I think we got room for 1 more each before we head to break.
I'm going to go with Double Vision.
Nice.
It's 3 red and a red for an enchantment. Whenever you cast your first instant or sorcery spell each turn, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. The key is that this is each turn. So this doesn't have to be just your turn. This can be your opponent's turn. So if you've got a couple of instants, you might want to spread them out a little, because you can get double value for both of them as long as you're not casting them both in the same turn.
Yeah.
If you've got a storm deck, then your first spell that you're going to play on the turn is going to be something that's going to give you significant ramp, because you're getting 2 of them. So then you get all that extra mana to now play the rest of the
Yeah.
the instants and sorceries on that turn. If you're playing Trader's Greed, now you're getting 2 creatures and you're getting 4 mana back.
Yeah.
If you're playing
any removal,
removal,
if you're
especially an instant speed artifact removal on an opponent's turn, now you're getting 2 of their artifacts instead of just the 1.
Playing Return to Dust on your main phase, you're getting 4. It's amazing.
Oh yeah. No, there's the only thing this card demands is a little bit of attention. You do have to sort of keep aware of what you want to cast, when you want to cast it, and sometimes you may have to slow your roll a little bit to maximize the use of this card. But
yeah,
I mean, you weigh that benefit against what you're doing and go from there.
There have been plenty of times where I've used this card and I'm like, I should have played a different instant or sorcery first.
Right. Because
now I'm copying, I don't know, Rampant Growth rather than Lightning Bolt type of thing.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it has its time and place. But I love this card because especially where, say your first instant or sorcery is Teach by Example, where your next spell will be copied. So you're copying the copy spell, so you get 2 of the copy. You get 3 of the follow. It's amazing. But I love it.
I just think the cards. I think the card's great. I play fewer decks that run a lot of sorceries and instants. So it is, for me, it's something that I'm less inclined to play just because the payoff in the long run may not be worth it. But there are so many decks out there that are focused on some kind of benefit from playing a sorcery in an instant, and if it just means that you need to stretch it out so you're playing some of it on your opponent's turn rather than just simply piling it all up on your turn, then go for it. I mean,
I think what's really nice too is that it immediately goes on the stack as soon as you cast your spell. So if somebody tries to get in there with a counter, they need 2 counters.
Yeah.
If you're countering something and you're worried that they'll counter your counter, you have 2 counters now. Like you're going to be able to do the thing you want to do if you are worried about counters.
Right. It's also cute when you when you're playing mass removal. Because if you're playing against, say, a Marchesa deck, that first mass removal spell sends everything to the graveyard and then it comes back.
Well, with Marchesa, everything comes back at the end of the or at the beginning.
So if you've got
like Persist or
or whatever, you're getting rid of the first round and then you've got them all vulnerable and now you're taking them out with the second spell. I mean, it's more of a corner case, but
even
where it works.
Anything with the type of thing like Aftermath, where it dies, brings a spirit into play, that type of thing.
Right.
Plenty of decks do that type of like recursive thing, and I think that board wipes are amazing, and sometimes they fall flat, but I think that just adds to the humor of it.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things to do with this is say like Snakeskin Veil, where it makes your target creature indestructible and hexproof, I think, or something.
I think so.
Or +1/+1 and indestructible. So now you get 2 out of it. Like it's just the little value you get out of it here and there that is sometimes not as intentional, just because it's there. So you get it done. Let's see. My next card I've talked about before, so I'll make it short.
Sure.
Garruk's Uprising. 2 and a green for an enchantment. Says when Garruk's Uprising enters the battlefield, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, draw a card. Creatures you control have trample. Whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card.
Yeah.
It's a consistent draw engine. As long as you're playing creatures, which in green,
shouldn't be
high chance, and just giving everything trample is excellent.
Especially when your creatures are 4 power.
Yeah. It really kind of plays with combat a bit in terms of like if everything has trample, all right, well, what if everything also had death touch? Or, like, there are certain ways you can go with this deck, or this card in a deck that just kind of compounds where you need it to.
Right.
But, I mean, even just in its base of, everything has trample on my side, I hope they continue this cycle. I don't know if there are any other cards in this cycle yet, but having a white one where all your creatures would have vigilance would be cool, and also have some sort of white card draw.
Yeah. The other piece I like about this card, it's only 3 mana. So this is a lot of times when you see card draw, it costs a pile. And, if you had told me that this card was going to cost 6 mana, I would be like, yeah, that's not surprising. And then you end up only drawing 2 or 3 cards off of it because it costs 6. So it's getting played so late in the game that you're playing it late in the game. Great, my creatures now have trample. I'm going to blast through for that last big hit. So this would be like almost a finishing spell. Because it's only 3, you're generally getting it out there before you're playing your 4-power creatures. So every single 4-power creature you put on the battlefield, you're now drawing a card. And, I mean, it's green. There's a good chance that you're going to be putting a ton of those out, especially considering when you start thinking about token creatures. It doesn't, it's not that big a stretch to get a 4-power token creature onto the battlefield.
Yeah.
So,
I think what I like about this card, too, is along the same lines of it being 3 mana. If you're playing it late, you could easily surprise an opponent with it in terms of like, oh, wow, now all his stuff has trample. But what's even better is you can either, if you need to like bait out the counter, if you've got 10 mana, play your 6 mana spell, bait out the counter, and now, because they're going to be like, oh, you only have 4 mana left, what are you going to do? You play this,
right?
And you're like, ha,
Yeah, this is my quasi-overrun.
Right.
Yes, my creatures don't get +3/+3, but they're already freaking huge.
Yeah. Now they have trample, period. Like, it's not until end of turn, it's just forever. Or even, if you're not worried about the counter spell, you play it with like 10 mana up.
Yeah.
You play it, now you have 7 mana, but you're probably drawing a card.
Right.
So now you get to play that card. And there's so often that there are like enchantments that it's like, oh, when it comes into play, draw a card, but you don't get to play that card right away because generally you don't have enough mana to do it.
Right. And the other way, like you said, you can bait out the counter.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then play this first. If you've got 10 mana, you're playing a 3 mana spell. You've got 7 mana still up.
Yeah.
That guy holding the counter spell is thinking, I really should counter this. But I'm taking a wild guess the next thing coming is going to be even worse than this. Because this was only 3 mana. There's still 7 mana to come. What else is coming? Then they have to play this guessing game of, do I play it now or not? And honestly, if they play it now, they burn the counterspell on a 3 mana spell. I'm hoping you have something else in your hand. Maybe not something that's going to give all your creatures trample, but something decent.
Yeah.
And it's going to come through. So it becomes, you do your dance around the counterspell.
Right.
But I think this works both ways.
Yeah.
So you can play it before or late.
You judge what you have in hand. You judge what you need at the moment, and you play whichever you think it needs to be first. But I think even the flexibility in it being the bait or it being the thing you need to get out, I think kind of shows that it's a perfectly cost enchantment.
Right.
So we're gonna throw it over to break, and when we get back, we're gonna have the rest of our cards.
Yeah.
So this is exciting.
We got some doozies coming up.
Yeah. Right back. This episode of Temple of Falsepod is brought to you by. They really just had to reprint Ugin the Spirit Dragon, didn't they? Nobody ever wants to play against Ugin. Everyone wants to play Ugin. And he can go in any deck. This episode of Temple of Falsepod is brought to you by the ire that Ugin has brought to any table that I've seen him be played. But hey, at least he's cheaper now. No, you know what? This episode of Temple of the False Pod is brought to you by Unsubstantiate, because sometimes you can't counter something, but you can just put the spell back in their hand. Alright, we're back. We got some cards from M21 for you. What's your next card, sir?
Sure. My next card is Fiery Emancipation.
Oh.
It's 3 red, red, and red. It's an enchantment. So yes, 6 mana enchantment. Here we go.
This is my kind of card.
If a source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals triple that damage to that permanent or player instead.
Triple?
Triple. So take virtually any card that does damage. You can't go wrong. Ever a source you control would deal damage. So this is combat damage. So your 2/2 creature now swings in and does 6 points of damage instead of 2. Your Lightning Bolt, the card that so many people are convinced has no business being in Commander because it's only 3 damage on one card that goes away, now does 9 points of damage for 1 red mana at instant speed. Take your pick, you know.
I mean, if you're in red, you're doing damage. Like, that's how you're winning the game, whether it's combat damage or through burn spells. And,
right.
I mean, sure, it's a 6 mana enchantment, but, like, red has plenty of access to treasures. We've got rituals. There are so many red rituals out there that it is easy to get this out fairly early.
Pick your damage X spell.
Yeah.
Where X equals 5. So you're playing it the turn after this, because you still only have that 6 mana, because rotten luck, you didn't draw another land. So it's with only 6 mana, your X is 5, you're doing 15 points of damage. It's just ridiculous. The amounts just are, when you're tripling, everything gets huge. Everything. I mean, your 1/1 creature that attacks in does 3 points of damage. For that matter, your 1/1 creature that sits there and doesn't attack, when it blocks, it does 3 points of damage. You know, first strike creatures become, well, it doesn't matter what their toughness is anymore.
This with Embercleave would be broken.
Yes. It is so over the top. Giving all of your creatures +1/+1. So you turn your 1/1s into 2/2s that do 6 points of damage. It is so easy to make the numbers so ridiculous that fast. It's just ridiculous. Yeah. And I appreciate that this is 6 mana, and most of the time it's going to burn the turn. However, a lot of times this is the finishing spell. Just because it's not a sorcery doesn't mean it isn't a finisher. You can play an enchantment for 6 mana and it can be your finisher. We just talked about Garrick's Uprising, and I would argue there are times when that 3 mana enchantment will be a finisher. This can be a finisher if you've got, 3 dragons. 3/4/4 dragons that are going to get through. Okay, well, that's 12 damage. 36 damage, sorry.
Yeah.
That's game-ending levels of damage.
I think, too, it is exactly the thing that love to talk about with Commander, which are these huge, splashy things. We saw so much of it in Battle for Baldur's Gate, the Commander Legends 2.
Right.
That, these are the types of spells that, sure, they cost, an arm and a leg in mana. This one also in money. But I think, it is exactly where I want the format to go. You say what the card does, and people just go, that sounds dumb. So silly. That's how it feels to me, is that it just feels silly. It feels over the top in the best way. I don't want to say that and have people think that I'm degrading the card. I love this card.
Yeah.
And it is because it does a very silly thing.
In case you're wondering, Pyrohemia is not loss of life. That is damage.
Ooh.
So spend 1 red, do 3 points of damage to every creature and every player.
Including you?
Oh yeah, including you. This is red. This is how we roll. If you've got Pyrohemia out and you're playing Fiery Emancipation, This is a warning to all of your opponents. This game is ending soon. You better be ready.
Yeah.
You have to do something about one of these cards.
Yeah, I mean,
I think this is delightful.
What my mind jumps to immediately is Chandra's Ignition.
Okay.
Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to each other creature and each opponent.
Oh, nice. Yeah, definitely.
Amazing. My next card's also going to be big. It's 3 green. I'm going to probably stick to green for the rest of this episode. For a 6/6 called Elder Gargaroth. It's a creature beast, not legendary, which is fairly amusing to me. I think it'd be really funny to have an EDH deck with Elder Gargaroth, so it'd be EGH. But it's Vigilance, Reach, Trample.
Yeah.
And whenever it attacks or blocks, choose one. Create a 3/3 green beast creature token. You gain 3 life or you draw a card. You're either going to be drawing a card or creating a beast. You're generally not going to be gaining that life unless you absolutely need to. And this does a great job of blocking because it's got reach. It does a great job of attacking because it's got trample.
Right.
And it can do both because it's got vigilance.
Yeah.
It's a perfect card. It's a 5 mana 6/6 in the very least, so it passes the vanilla test. It only goes up from there.
Yeah.
Giving this thing haste would be
oh hell, give this thing double strike.
Ooh. If because of this you become the threat, as long as you can keep this alive to block, you're going to be getting, you could be getting 4 cards a turn, you could be getting 4 beasts a round, or 12 life. Is there any sort of, intermediary there?
Right.
It gives you the flexibility when you need it, and that's excellent. In the very least, you'll stop people from attacking you. And on top of it, it's got trample. So, it's going to be getting some damage through if you need it for the Monarch, if you need it for the Initiative.
Right.
These excellent tertiary reasons for getting damage through. The only sad thing about it, which also can be good because it can be duplicated, is that it's not a legendary creature. I think this would make an excellent commander. But, you can also have 6 of them if you decide to duplicate it somehow. Wonderful.
Very nice. I like that one.
Yeah, me too.
My next card, Transmogrify.
Ooh.
It's 3 and a red for a sorcery. It says exile target creature. That creature's controller reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a creature card. That player puts that card onto the battlefield, then shuffles the rest into their library. I love this. This is red polymorph. Or you can look at it as a weaker version of Chaos Warp. Because Chaos Warp targets, I believe it's any permanent.
Yeah, and it's a 3 mana instant. This is a 4 mana sorcery.
Exactly. So you can look at it as a weaker version of the Chaos Warp. But the difference, though, is that this is not looking to replace Chaos Warp. This is another way for red to get rid of a creature without having to do damage to it. Too many times you can't get, some creature has some prevents all damage being dealt to it, and you can't get around that. So this is just exile target creature.
Yeah, this gets rid of fog banks. This gets rid of indestructible creatures.
Right. So the bane of red's existence, and now we're just going to exile that creature. Yeah, you are rolling the dice, but odds are you're getting rid of a creature that is really bad, and either you're going to replace it with a card that's about the same or better for you. So you take that trade.
Or I mean, even like you said, it's essentially polymorph. So you take one of your many goblin tokens, turn it into a bigger, better goblin.
Yeah, you can use it on your own stuff.
Yeah.
And if you're running a deck that's primarily blue-red instants and sorceries with a handful of massive creatures, well, dunking one of your tokens to go and get that out could very well be worth it.
Oh, absolutely.
So, I got a kick out of it. And it's a variation on cards we already have and in a different color setting. So I wanted to include it here.
Yeah. speaking of cards that we have but different, my next card is Conclave Mentor.
Okay.
It's a green and a white for 2/2, so it's a Lesnia Bear.
Mm-hmm.
Centaur Cleric. If one or more +1/+1 counters would be put on a creature you control, that many +1/+1 counters are put on. That many +1/+1/+1 counters are put on that creature instead. When Conclave Mentor dies, you gain life equal to its power. So, the idea behind this card is that you kind of load itself up with 2 +1/+1 counters each time, and then you gain a bunch of life when it dies. Or, it does the Peer thing. It does the Hardened Scales. Is that?
Hardened Scales gives it a +1/+1 counter.
Yeah.
An extra +1/+1
right.
counter.
So, that's what this is essentially doing. You'll love to see this effect often.
Yeah.
I like that it's not necessary. Like, it doesn't do the doubling season thing where doubling season is any type of counter.
Right. This goes in your, if you're putting Hardened Scales into a deck, then Conclave Mentor, if you're also running white, there's no reason to not also put this one in.
Especially, I think the card's like a quarter. Like, it's...
Oh, yeah, it's dirt cheap.
Yeah. And, for a 2/2 for 2, it's, on rate, so...
Yeah. Oh, yeah, no, it just makes sense, and honestly, if you're running Selesnya, you probably are running +1/+1 counters. This, coupled with... why am I blanking on the name?
It also goes well with things like Forgotten Ancient, because you'll be getting 2 for every spell. And when you move them from Forgotten Ancient, you'll be adding an additional 1 to when you move it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Which is excellent. And I always love just luck of the draw type, like, just, what's the word? Where something just happens just because it's whatever, like...
Cathar's Crusade.
Cathar's Crusade, right.
Right. So, if you're running Cathar's Crusade, this is just going to be outstanding. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. So a creature comes in, you put 2 +1/+1 counters on each creature you control. It just doubles it up. And anybody who runs Cathar's Crusade knows full well that you're not really ever putting 2 +1/+1 counters on a creature. Because if you're playing one creature, you're playing more creatures.
Yeah.
This is designed for token decks where you're going to drop four creatures at once, and then suddenly you're piling tokens on.
Yeah, and you're going to be gaining at least 2 life from this card. There's, if you're playing +1/+1 counters, there's no way that this isn't going to be bigger than 2, and it's highly unlikely people are going to exile it.
No one's going to exile this card.
No.
It doesn't have haste. It doesn't have first strike. It has no evasion whatsoever.
It's just very... what's the word? It's a very vulnerable enchantment is what it is.
Right. And the idea is when it dies, you gain power. Or you gain life,
Yeah.
I'm not going to go out of my way to stop you from gaining 7 life.
Right.
There's just... I'm not going to waste... unless it costs me virtually nothing to do it, I'm not going to stop you from getting that. There's better things to use my cards on, so you're going to get that bonus.
Yeah, it's just like a nice little bonus. Because, I would play the card as a 2/2 for 2 that has just that first line of text.
Yeah.
So, I think we got time for one more each.
All right. I'll roll in with the big guns.
Yeah.
This is my top one for M21. It's just... I think it's easily the best card in M21. And I think it ranks pretty high up overall.
Bruce, you can't do Fire Emancipation again.
No, I'm not going to. I'm going to do Brash Taunter.
Ah, yes.
Brash Taunter costs 4 and a red for a creature. It's a goblin. I don't remember his power and toughness.
It's a 1/1.
1/1. Right. So...
And he's indestructible.
He is indestructible. Does not pass the vanilla test. But wait, here's where it gets good. Whenever Brash Taunter is dealt damage... it deals that much damage to target opponent. Well, that sounds great. However, then the next ability is you spend 2 and a red and tap Brash Taunter, and the Taunter fights another target creature. Now, Every fight ends like this. Brash Taunter fights a creature. Brash Taunter does 1 damage, the creature unlikely to die, then it deals however much damage. Probably a 6/6, say.
Yeah.
6 damage gets dealt to the Taunter. He's indestructible. He does not die. But that's 6 damage, then it deals that much damage to target opponent. So you deal 6 damage to an opponent. That's how Brash Taunter works. Okay. Now, remember Fire Emancipation?
Mm.
So now that 6/6 creature is doing 18 points to the Brash Taunter.
No. Fire Emancipation, I believe, is one way.
I thought it was triple.
No, it is.
It's just
but
my stuff.
It's just your stuff. But still, you're doing 8.
So it's only going to be doing the 18 points of damage because it's
Right.
going to triple the 6 that it's dealing to the opponent.
The 1/1 you have is dealing 18 to your
Right.
face.
Right. Now, this isn't just an opponent's creature. This can be yours. Because, I mean, the Taunter is only doing 1 point of damage. So if you have a 6/6, then that 6 gets dealt to the Taunter, and then the Taunter can do it to target opponent. It doesn't say the opponent who controls that creature. It's wide open. So any damage that gets dealt to the Taunter can then be redirected. So if the Taunter blocks some massive creature in combat, boom! Your opponent can then suffer all of that damage back to them. It's a guaranteed damage every single turn. Every single turn. And I don't know how many times I have run Brash Taunter in games where an opponent gets a 20/20. Well, thank you, because you've just killed yourself. Because now I'm doing 20 points of damage to you when I fight that creature, and you have to figure out a way to get rid of your own creature. Because you can't have it out there. It will kill you. You have to be doing at least that much damage to me every single time. And it just doesn't happen. No, Brash Taunter is freaking outstanding. It's a game changer. When that creature hits the battlefield, you must destroy it. Do not be fooled into thinking that this 1/1 indestructible is something that can be allowed to just sit there. You can't.
No.
There are times when you're going to look at it and say, it's okay because he's going to swing elsewhere. And that's great, but maybe not. You don't really know because your predictions are always thrown off a little bit when you realize that the guy who controls the Brash Taunter is looking not necessarily to kill the person who has the 20/20 creature.
Right. Because you can target any opponent after.
Right. So the guy with the 20/20, okay, I'm going to have to take 20 damage next turn. Fine. But for this turn, boom, you're taking the 20. And next turn, I'll do the 20 to kill that guy off.
And I feel like, obviously, it being indestructible is a big part of how this all works.
Right.
I've seen you do some ridiculous things with Brash Taunter.
It causes a complete flip in the game. And if you're not running it, you have to get rid of this thing. You have to. You just can't let it sit out there. It will turn the game on its head. You will lose the game out of nowhere. It is so easy to pump up a creature. If Andy's got a creature that he's swinging at an opponent, and he's able to pump it up, they give it, +3. So it turns into from a 6/6 to a 9/9. Okay, so then that creature does 9 points of damage to an opponent. Great, now I'm going to fight that creature and do 9 more damage to that opponent. That it could be that same opponent. It could be Andy. It could be whoever. It's just the number. The damage just comes out of there, and it's an ability.
Yeah.
So you can just sit on it. Wait till the end of your last opponent's turn, and then just use it on whatever the best option is.
That's probably the best anyway, because then you essentially get, hopefully, at least 2 triggers off of it, because people will maybe be attacking you. So you get to use it as a blocker, and then you use it just before your turn and untap with it. It's amazing.
Yeah. So, exactly. Using
it's
as a blocker.
incidental.
You don't even really need to use them as a blocker. As long as you're clear that, it's like, well, I wouldn't come at me.
Yeah.
Because then, if you want to attack the person who has the Brash Taunter, you now have to look around the board and see who has the biggest power creature.
Yeah.
Because that's how much damage you're going to take.
Yeah.
And that's after block.
And because it's an ability, an
Yeah.
activated ability that doesn't say sorcery,
Yeah.
you can do this in response to somebody killing the biggest thing on the board.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, you're like, no, I need that damage. And honestly, maybe you'll be able to take the person out who's trying to kill it. Killing people at instant speed is an amazing feeling, honestly.
Oh, yeah.
Making sure that whatever they're trying to do doesn't resolve
Yeah.
because they are no longer in the game. It's the best kind of counter, honestly.
It is. And if you ever get the opportunity to play in against an opponent who's running Sarah Avatar, I know it's pretty rare nowadays, but if you do, please take it. Please take it. Do not wait, because that sucker runs around the board and all of a sudden it's over. If you haven't used Brash Taunter, I think you're starting to understand why we're so high on this card.
Yeah.
It's just spectacular.
It's so much fun.
And especially when you've got a meta that does lean a little heavy towards creatures, it's awesome. And even a meta that doesn't, quite often, that big creature that does come down is one of the finishers, and they tend to be big. And Brash Taunter loves playing against opponents who have massive creatures. Just loves it. Brash Taunter did great work during BrewCon, and I saw it win at least 3 games.
Amazing.
Yeah, and that was not in one deck. That was over 3 different decks. I won 2 games with Brash Taunter, and I saw somebody else win a game with Brash Taunter as well. So this card is great. It is spectacular. I strongly encourage you to pick them up.
I'm almost glad we're out of time now, because my last card was going to be less exciting than this. It was Wildwood Scourge. It's just 1 and an X for a 0/0. It's a Hydra. It does the Hydra thing.
Yeah.
And when you get +1/+1 counters on non-Hydras, it gets +1/+1 counters. That's it. It's exciting. Check it out. But I think we're out of time. Because good. I mean, more people need to play Brash Taunter. More people need to play Selfless Savior.
Yeah.
These are all good effects that I think...
These are good effects, and
Wizards.
On top of that, there's a bunch of cards in there that offer variations of the cards that we've come to expect in a lot of the sets. Check them out. Transmogrify and Traitorous Greed. I mean, they're not going to go in every deck, but they will go in some if it fits your theme, and that, to me, is one of the ways that Commander is getting better with all of the extra cards that are coming out. It's easier and easier to get all of your cards on theme.
Yeah.
So you can still do that act of treason, but it doesn't have to be act of treason. Oh, I wish that it somehow fit with my theme, but it doesn't really fit, but I got to run it. And now, Traitorous Greed, maybe that fits your theme. Maybe it's because you've got the extra mana to be able to do something else. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So next week we've got our finale.
Yes.
Every finale, we like to do this exercise where we each build a deck based on a theme. And this theme, because last year I really liked the episode we did about standard rotation, we're going to do that as our theme episode. As of release, I believe standard rotated out 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
With the release of Dominaria United.
Right.
So
what are the sets we've lost?
So we've lost...
I say we. What are the sets that have been lost from standard? Because we haven't lost them.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And we'll obviously talk more about that next week. But
Yeah.
I really like to highlight cards that are leaving standard because we'll see some sort of fluctuation in price, whether it goes up or down.
Yeah.
It might dip before it goes up. So
Sure.
you'll want to keep an eye out for those. So we've got Zendikar Rising, Kaldheim, Strixhaven, and the first D&D set, Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. So we'll do a legend from a standard legal legend.
Yeah.
And the cards can be from either a commander deck or standard legal.
Right.
I don't want to go too deep into, I think, commander legends or...
Yeah.
So
we're not trying to reproduce Breakdown here.
Right. It'll be cards, from one of those 4 sets or their corresponding commander decks.
Right.
And that's it.
Yep.
So.
All right.
Cool. So we'll see you next week. If you have a deck list for that, any of you listeners out there, if you have a deck list for that, we'd love to see it. We'll retweet it or something. So send us.
You bet.
We'd love to talk about it, honestly.
Yeah.
So we've got that going on. So we'll see you next week. We're going to go play some Magic. Have a great night. Thank you so much for listening. We're Temple of the False Pod, where our decks are not optimized, but our plays sure as heck are fun. I'm Andy.
I'm Bruce.
Again, thank you again for listening. Play some Magic for me. And may your 5th land be the Temple.
Bye!
Wait. Before you go, I just wanted to say thank you for listening. You can reach out to us via email at falsepodmtg@gmail.com or on Twitter @falsepodmtg. Bruce is @manaburned, and I'm @AndyWeekend, though you'll definitely notice I use the podcast Twitter far more often. Now that we've got you here, make sure you subscribe, like, rate us on whatever podcast platform you use. It helps us out. It gets us more reach. Subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. Like a video there. Leave some comments for more casual enjoyment. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back with some more timeless discussions about all things casual. So come hang out, and may your 5th land be the Temple. Bye-bye. Should I do my best, Bruce? Bye!